Welcome, you, dear listener, to a journey not through fiction, but through forgotten truth, one that lay hidden in the shadowed shelves of the world's oldest libraries, buried under dust, silence, and centuries of suppression. Today, we open not just a book, but a portal to a different kind of gospel, one powerful enough to shake the foundation of everything we thought we knew about faith, history, and the soul itself. Sit with me as we walk through the hushed corridors of time and unseal the pages of the Gospel of Mary. There exists a manuscript so quietly revolutionary, so spiritually daring, that the most dominant religious authority in Christian history spent not decades, but centuries ensuring it would vanish from public memory. It wasn't burned, for fire would have drawn too much attention. It wasn't denounced openly, for that would raise too many questions. Instead, it was hidden, buried in obscurity, locked away in private collections, and relegated to the realm of academic whisper. This gospel didn't need to be so. But before we dive into its verses, let us clarify who we're speaking of. Not Mary, the revered mother of Jesus. No. This is Mary Magdalene, the woman history mistook, misrepresented, and maligned, often branded a harlot by the early church. She emerges from this gospel not as a penitent sinner, but as a beacon of insight, a teacher of secret wisdom. What if the very teachings attributed to Jesus found their deepest echo not in Peter, Paul, or John, but in Mary? Let us pause here. Friend, take a breath, as if you're stepping into a forgotten reading room lined with leather-bound secrets. This gospel is not simply a chapter excluded from the Bible. It's a key to a locked door. And behind that door lies a vision of spirituality that doesn't require hierarchy, doesn't insist on shame, and doesn't ask you to surrender your soul to an institution. To be continued. Picture a dusty archive room where the air smells faintly of parchment and oil lamps. Now imagine pulling from a hidden drawer an ancient codex, worn by time yet pulsing with forgotten power. This is the Gospel of Mary, discovered in 1896 in a leather-bound papyrus known as the Berlin Codex. It was incomplete, fragmented, but even its broken lines carry a thunderous message that salvation is not about obedience to men, but awakening to your own divine essence. The Gospel of Mary is not merely an ancient document, it is a philosophical revolution. In its pages, Jesus speaks not of laws or rituals, but of inner knowing. He tells his followers that truth lies not in Scripture alone, but within their hearts. He speaks of the inner man, a phrase that draws us into a realm of introspection and awakening. But when he departs, it is not Peter or any of the other apostles who rises to interpret these teachings. It is Mary. Her voice is clear, calm, wise. She comforts the grieving disciples and then recounts teachings Jesus shared with her privately. Teachings the others never heard, or perhaps were not ready to receive. She speaks of the soul's ascent through 7 powers of darkness, archetypes that bind the soul: ignorance, desire, wrath, darkness, craving for false peace, judgment, and the compulsion of the flesh. These are not sins to be punished, but illusions to be pierced. This is where the gospel's power truly begins to echo beyond parchment and ink. For in revealing the soul's path to liberation as one of inward struggle and inner transformation, the Gospel of Mary stands in direct opposition to the growing structure of early institutional religion. Where the church demanded submission, Mary offered sovereignty. Where bishops and creeds sought uniformity, Mary whispered of freedom. Her words didn't ask for a priest. They didn't require a cathedral. They only required silence, honesty, and the courage to look within. That's why she was dangerous. Let's explore why this gospel terrified the powers that be. By the 2nd century, the church was evolving. What began as a spiritual movement of seekers and mystics was becoming a political entity aligned with Rome. Unity was needed, not just spiritual unity, but doctrinal and administrative. The Gospel of Mary, with its radical claim that the divine spark dwells within each of us, bypassed all external authority. It wasn't just her gender that unsettled the patriarchs, it was her message. And so, Mary's gospel was pushed aside, not destroyed, but omitted, quietly excluded from the canon at key councils. Buried, not because it was heretical, but because it offered a kind of freedom that institutions cannot survive. Let's pause again. Reflect on this. In a world where we are taught to look outward, to leaders, to doctrines, to traditions, this gospel insists the real path begins within. It's not rebellion, it's remembrance. The Gospel of Mary also reminds us of something older than even Christianity, the sacred feminine. In its pages, woman is not subordinate. She is wise, not excluded, but entrusted. Jesus does not silence Mary. He reveals his deepest teachings to her. And when the others resist her, she remains resolute. What does that tell us about who she was? And what does that tell us about how history chose to remember her? To be continued. Imagine sitting in a medieval scriptorium. A monk copies text by candlelight, choosing carefully what to include in the sacred tomes and what to exclude. Those excluded pages often held the voices of women, mystics, dreamers, and rebels. Among them was Mary. Her teachings, too pure, too empowering, were wrapped in silence. The Gnostic vision Mary represents paints a different cosmology, one where the physical world is not evil, but illusory, a reflection rather than reality. Salvation, then, is not escape from punishment, but escape from illusion. And how does one do that? Through gnosis, not knowledge in the academic sense, but deep, embodied insight. Knowing oneself as divine, realizing the soul is not broken, only forgetful. And what does this mean for you, the modern reader, the seeker? It means you don't need to climb a mountain or bow before stone altars to touch the sacred. You already carry it, within your doubts, within your silence, within your breath. Mary's gospel is also a mirror. It reflects back the divine potential you may have forgotten. It invites you to step out of the machinery of fear and into a life of presence, to replace guilt with grace, and to honor the feminine voice within, be it creativity, intuition, compassion, or wisdom. Here's how you begin. Each morning, sit quietly, not to empty your mind, but to listen, not to seek answers, but to hear your soul speak. Write what comes. Ask honest questions. Not what am I supposed to believe, but what feels true in my bones. Second, examine your spiritual inheritance. What ideas about shame, authority, or salvation did you inherit from your culture or upbringing? Lay them gently on the table. Are they serving your growth or your fear? Third, awaken to balance. Masculine energy builds systems. Feminine energy restores harmony. Both are sacred. Mary's gospel doesn't replace one with the other. It invites them to dance. And now we ask, why did the Vatican fear this gospel? Because it dismantles hierarchy. It makes every person a living temple. It undermines centuries of theology that taught you were separate, sinful, and in need of external mediation. Mary says otherwise. She says you are luminous, that the divine didn't abandon you. You forgot. But forgetting is not the end. And now, Now, you remember, let's continue our journey deeper. Today, in an age of noise and spiritual fatigue, Mary's voice returns not just as a forgotten scroll, but as a guide. In a time when many are disillusioned by institutions, her words call us back to the heart. They whisper that the divine is not above but within, not a doctrine but a dialogue, not a punishment but a presence. The Gospel of Mary is not for rebels, it's for rememberers. If you've ever felt like something was missing in mainstream spirituality, if the rituals feel empty, the sermons rehearsed, and the guilt too loud, then maybe Mary is the voice you've been waiting for. Her message is clear. You do not need permission to be whole. You only need the courage to be still, to go within, and to reclaim what was always yours. The true scandal of the Gospel of Mary is not that it was written, it's that it speaks to something the world still resists: the empowerment of the soul, the wisdom of women, and the sacredness of inner knowing. So let it be said, this gospel was not lost. It was waiting, here in the quiet of our library, under the soft light of sacred curiosity. We welcome it back. The Gospel of Mary is not just history, it is hope. Not just mystery, but memory. Will you accept the invitation? Take 5 minutes today, light a candle, read her words aloud, or simply breathe and ask, what do I already know, but have been afraid to trust? Let the answers come not from the pulpit, but from the pulse of your own soul. In closing, remember this: the divine is not distant. It is not male or female. It is not bound to ritual or robe. It is a spark, ancient and alive, inside you. Mary Magdalene saw it. Jesus affirmed it. And now, you are being asked to see it too. Thank you for walking through the library of forgotten truths with us. If this message moved you, share it, not to persuade, but to awaken. The age of passive belief is fading. The age of embodied knowing is dawning. And perhaps, just perhaps, the Gospel of Mary has returned because you are ready. Until next time, dear reader, let this sacred text read you.